Welcome to the Deep Dive,
Emerald City Hockey's Seattle Kraken podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Deep Dive, Emerald City Hockey, Seattle Kraken podcast. And RJ, it's a bittersweet episode for me. Can you guess why?
That's right. Your last episode from where you're sitting right now.
Yeah. I mean, maybe not forever. Like, I could come down and visit and maybe record an episode or so. But certainly with the setup as it has been for the entire existence of Emerald City Hockey, this is it. That's kind of wild to think about.
Yeah, it is. I mean, Dylan, how you feeling about it? Because that's the bitter, right?
Yes.
Obviously, it's the last one from this. It's, you're getting the chance to move up here. It means you have to leave a lot of things behind. But how about the suite also?
Yeah, I mean, the suite is fantastic. There's obviously a lot of stuff I'm looking forward to, especially as hockey season, we're almost to September, so like training camp's going to be announced soon and all that kind of stuff. And I'm really looking forward to all of that and being up there for it all. I was going to say the biggest bitter part is just going to be like having to tear all this down and pack it up. Like it's going to be a pain, man. Like that's not going to be fun.
And I think you told me beforehand, this is the last bit that you need to do. You've gotten everything else packed, right? Because you needed to keep all of this in place for this episode.
Yes.
And then once it's over, you could get everything going.
Yeah. I was going to say, if you were to talk to me like over the weekend and today and tomorrow, you would notice that I'm just kind of like rotating the same two outfits and washing them just because I have all my clothes packed. So, it's good. I'm excited. And yeah, can't wait to get up there. And RJ, once I'm up there, I'll be a lot closer to Queen Anne Beer Hall.
That is true. You'll be close to Queen Anne Beer Hall and just in time for college football season, for hockey season. Lots going on. But I don't know about you, Dylan. I'm excited for college football season. I watched the first game. Yes, I know. In Dublin, Florida State versus Georgia Tech. Big upset. It reminded me how exciting college football gets. And I mean, nowhere more exciting to watch it than at Queen Anne Beer Hall. Because I feel like college football is just one of those sports where it's different than NFL. It's different than anywhere else. Just everyone gets so into it and it gets so rowdy. And at the beer hall, like that is the place for it.
Yeah, college football lends itself to a crowd in a way that the NFL, I feel like, doesn't always now. Like, I feel like in certain markets, like Seattle is one where you want to go to Lumen, you want to be around everybody. But I think a lot of people watch the NFL for fantasy purposes. And so you're just kind of like looking and you want to be bouncing around. You want to be checking in on all your guys. And it doesn't kind of lend itself to the same just you're there for the sole purpose of rooting for that team or school the way college football does. So I do agree that I think college football at a place like Queen Anne Beer Hall would be just a ton of fun. So
yeah, and UW coming off a pretty good season. So I think the atmosphere for those games will be extra special.
Yeah, new conference too.
That's right. Big Ten time.
This whole thing's going to be so weird. I still don't even know what to think of it. But I'm excited to see it all play out. Now, on to today's podcast, RJ. Because today's podcast is the last of August, which means it's the last of our way too early month. And this is the one where we close out the month predicting what we think the standings and it's our division preview for the Pacific Division. I was trying to make it sound like bigger and epic, but it's our Pacific Division preview. We're going to look at all the teams that the Kraken are in the division with, and then at the end we will have our standings prediction. And it's generally one of the ones we get the most engagement with each year. So I'm really looking forward to this one and kind of breaking down what some of these teams around the Kraken in the Pacific Division ended up doing, because there's some really interesting moves here.
Right. I don't think you need to say anything to make it more epic, right? This is predicting the order of the standings for the Pacific Division. This is what they play the 82 games for. Right. That's what it's all about. So, I'm excited to get into it, kind of see where every team in the division is stacking up. A lot of moves made all throughout the division. We got some teams that'll probably rise, some teams that'll probably fall, and we get to see where the Kraken find themselves in all of it.
Yep, definitely. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. We start at the bottom of the division from last year. We go reverse order of standings from last season, which means we're starting with the team, you're talking about movers, RJ, that realistically I think is going to have the biggest move of any team in this division, up or down, and that is the San Jose Sharks.
Really down? Oh, biggest move up or down? I get. I'm like, I don't think they have much further
They
they
don't
could
have much.
possibly fall from last season. Of course, finishing last place in the NHL, netting the first overall pick in Macklin Celebrini. It looks like he's going to be playing his rookie season in San Jose, and so I think we can both agree that they figure to be better than last year. I don't think they could be much worse. But how much better is the question? They've got a new coach in Ryan Warsofsky. They've got guys like Macklin Celebrini coming in. They added our old friend Alex Wenberg, former Kraken, among some others, Tyler Toffoli, Yaroslav Askarov. They just made that trade last week. So a lot of new faces in San Jose. How far do you think it gets them?
I mean, we'll save it for the end, the actual prediction of where in the division.
Speaking generally,
but generally, I think this team's gonna be like not that bad, because you look at the forward group that they have, because it's the guys you mentioned, but it's also going to be like Will Smith should be there, and I think is going to end up playing for them, and he should be pretty good. And you look at another year and more opportunity potential for William Eklund after kind of having his first full season there in San Jose and everything, and I think he played well and has some room for growth. So I look at this forward group and I think it's young. It's definitely going to be young, and they're going to have to figure some things out, but they have a lot of skill. And I feel like in the NHL, generally you want to be betting on skill. I feel like they've got skill. I think they've got a really interesting new head coach in Ryan Warsofsky. We talked about him as a potential option for the Kraken all offseason. I think he's going to be able to get a lot out of this roster and do a lot of interesting things with this roster. That being said, I then look at the blue line and I go, this is probably the worst blue line in the NHL. And I look at the goaltending and I go, it's serviceable. We'll see how much Askarov plays and the first full season in the NHL for him. I think that the skill level on this team is going to just be substantially better from last year. You look, they had one 20-goal scorer. Like they were struggling last year. And I feel like that's not going to necessarily be the case. They're going to be able to put up some goals. I just worry about their ability to defend. I just think that is so poor, like so unbelievably poor. They're just going to be hemorrhaging, chances the other way.
Yeah, you hit on the key for me, and that's the blue line, which I agree, I think is the worst in the NHL. You've got Cody Ceci probably looking to play first line minutes or first pairing minutes, and that's just never a good sign. I mean, you go to the depth and it's not a whole lot better. You have the ghost of Marc-Edouard Vlasic still skating around the ice. That's never good. I think at least they'll be a more fun team to watch. I think that's the one thing you can guarantee about San Jose this year is they're going to be fun to watch. They've got some young skilled players. Still a lot of question marks as far as putting it all together. We've seen that in the past with young teams, as talented as they can be, still are going to have their growing pains, right? And I think the Sharks will still experience plenty of those this year. They're not ready to come out of the rebuild quite yet. This is still going to be another rebuilding year for San Jose pretty solidly. And then the goaltending, it is serviceable, but there are still a lot of question marks. I know you can never predict goaltending, but Mackenzie Blackwood seems solid. Again, we'll see how many games Askarov plays, because that's going to be the big key. If he can come in and show that he is ready to be an NHL starter, potentially even at 22 years old, then you might be looking at some more standing points than you'd otherwise see. But as of right now, I don't think we can forecast that as a difference maker.
No, I think it's too soon for him. Mackenzie Blackwood, I mean, deserves to be talked about. 585 quality start percentage last year, behind the blue line that he was behind the team in general that he was behind. Phenomenal. I mean, 24 quality starts. He only won 10 games.
I know, it's wild. He had so many good games. We saw a few of them against the Kraken, right?
Yeah.
Where he was able to just take over an entire game. And part of my thinking with San Jose too, I mean, we'll get to our predictions later, is just that if any of these guys really does have a breakout season, the veterans I'm talking about, like a Mackenzie Blackwood or like a Michael Granlund or even like a Fabian Zetterlund at only 25. But if any of these guys has a really good season, they might just be traded out of there, because that's probably what GM Mike Grier should do.
Yeah, that is something to think about. I don't know that they could though.
Blackwood, they should be able to. There's always teams that need goalies.
Goaltending is separate. There might even be a team we talked about later that could be interested in Blackwood.
Yes,
I agree with that with some of these guys, but at the same time, it's obvious that they want to insulate Celebrini and Will Smith with veteran presences around them, with good players, kind of do the same thing Chicago did last year with Connor Bedard, where you go out there, you bring in some free agents. San Jose did that this year. They brought in Alexander Wenberg, who's going to probably be their 1C and take those really strong, tough minutes and have all the bad matchups. You bring in a Tyler Toffoli that you can stick on the wing of a Celebrini or a Will Smith, and he's a veteran sniper who is going to put up probably 25 goals. Like, doesn't matter where he is or what he's doing, he just puts up 25 goals every year. I feel like if you're making moves like that and you understand the importance of both insulating from tough matchups your young players, but also surrounding them with skills so that they can get better at the NHL level, I don't know that you're going to have a fire sale then come deadline time beyond any pieces that might be rentals.
Yeah, and I look at the pieces maybe that could be rentals, like especially like a Cody Ceci or a Jan Ruta whose contracts are up, and that's where the blue line could potentially even get worse.
Yeah,
but I think it takes you from ugly to bad. I don't think this team will be ugly like it was last year, but I think you're still firmly in bad territory.
Yeah, they could still end up 32nd in goals against because they very well could. This defense is that bad. But I think they're going to be higher than 31st in goals for. Like, I just think the addition, Tyler Toffoli alone is going to be able to help with that. I really don't think we've talked enough about that and about that signing. And I think that Wenberg is going to do a lot for this team. Like I said, he just gets to take all those tough minutes and help elevate the guys around him in that way by taking all that on himself.
Yeah, I think so. Wenberg especially, he's going to be so important to this team in ways that aren't going to be apparent just by looking at the stat sheet, because like you said, he's going to munch the toughest, most thankless minutes you possibly can. But I think if anyone's suited for that role, it's Alex Wenberg. I think he's the kind of selfless guy who doesn't mind doing that for a team. And I mean, that's why he signed where he did. He's going to have that role.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting. I'm with you. San Jose is going to be watchable this year in a way they were not watchable last year. They were just not watchable at all. I think San Jose will be watchable this year. They're going to be better. They're still not going to be good. I think that's...
Yeah, I think we can agree on that generally. Now, speaking of watchable but bad, because I think Anaheim probably fell into that category last year.
Yeah.
What do we think of the Ducks here? I mean, they made some changes, I guess. Okay, this is a team that notably this offseason could not get players to sign in free agency, because I think they wanted to do a similar thing to San Jose, right?
Yes.
Where you bring in a few more veterans, you go from ugly to bad, or in this case from bad to, maybe somewhat decent, because you have some good young players. They couldn't get guys to sign there. And that seems like a real problem to me. Mm-hmm. And that's certainly something that's going to impact their outlook for this coming season.
It is. And I think the reasons why are kind of obvious. One, you have a coach that I don't think many guys want to play for, Greg Cronin. I just think that, why is he still the coach?
We saw at the end of last year in those two games against the Kraken, it looked like nobody knew where to be on the ice. The team was just falling apart mentally. It looked like I don't understand why he's back, especially because it looked like he was on a 1-year deal.
Yeah.
And then the team just didn't really address it. Do we know what his contract situation is?
I do not. I have not seen anything, but yes, when it was initially announced, like we had looked at that NHL article because we couldn't believe it, but it looked like he was signed for 1 year initially. So he must have re-upped. You'd sign a coach by now if he wasn't, right? So at some point along the way, there must have been an extension. It's a weird situation, but it's clear that NHL players don't believe in him as a coach. That I think is clear. And the difference between a San Jose and an Anaheim, if you're a veteran looking to go and play around young players, is that the players for Anaheim, with the exception of Leo Carlsson, they are not young. Trevor Zegras has been around for a little while now. Mason McTavish has a couple full seasons under his belt. You have to now believe like these guys have not been winning basically in spite of those guys being good. All of a sudden becomes the mindset. And that's kind of a hard mindset to create in your mind. And I feel like, whereas with San Jose, you're like, wow, I get to go with a first overall pick. I get to go play with a Will Smith who has proven at multiple levels now he can do it. Whereas you're looking in Anaheim and you're like, I mean, how much better can Mason McTavish realistically be? He's played 2 full seasons. Is he going to be that guy? Trevor Zegras, is he a center? Is he not a center? How much better could he actually be? I don't know. And I think all those question marks around the young core that the Ducks have was just enough to be a turnoff for NHL veterans.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And you look at the roster that they're left with then, and you're still relying on a lot of very young players taking that next step without a whole lot of veteran help. You're relying on a Mason McTavish, reaching that next step in his career. You're relying on Leo Carlsson building on the progress that he made last year. You're relying on Cutter Gauthier coming into the NHL now and being a difference maker right off the bat as a rookie. You're relying on Frank Vetrano continuing the progress that he had last season. I mean, 37 goals last year, which is just wild, but shooting at 13.6%, right? You're relying on him to stay good. And I think there's a whole lot of things that have to go right for them to be anywhere near competitive. I guess the big positive I'll give is that the blue line, it could potentially be decent. It's certainly better than San Jose's. You have Cam Fowler, who can munch huge minutes. I can't believe he's still doing this.
I know.
But Cam Fowler, Brian Dumoulin brought in as a veteran presence. That's kind of the one veteran they were able to bring in. They did that via trade. Radko Gudas is going to bunch some minutes as well. Pavel Minchikov looked promising at times. Mm-hmm. Basically, the Ducks have a lot of good blue line prospects that might come up and play, and you just don't know how much of an impact they're going to have. But even I guess none of these guys are really. How old is Olin Zellweger's 21? He's going to need to take a step from last year. He didn't look very impressive to me toward the end of last season, but apparently I think you mentioned it was a couple weeks ago to me that he had a lot of points in his last 10 games or so.
Yeah. He kind of came on at the very, very end. So we'll see what that means. Who knows what that means. They also were giving him, kind of more playing time too. I think they just knew the season was over, so they're just throwing him out there and letting him do whatever. Because why wouldn't you? They have him. I'm interested to see if Tristan Lanu can come into the lineup and play a full season on the back end for them as well. I think he's somebody that has a lot of potential. Was named best defenseman in the Q a couple years ago, back when the Ducks had best defenseman in all 3 leagues across the Canadian Hockey League. Zellweger doing his part in that as well, and Minchikov, who you mentioned. So I think they have the bones there on the back end to get better. I think that's going to be, but that's going to be a process for them. It's just, Mason McTavish, this is your time to shine, because Leo Carlsson's knocking on the door of being this team's 1C for the future. Because Leo Carlsson, to me, was the one guy up front that looked like he could be the guy for this team last year. And so Mason McTavish has got to find a way to step up. I think we know at this point the story with Trevor Zegras. Trevor Zegras probably not on this team come the end of the trade deadline, I would have to imagine. So I think that's something to maybe look out for with the Ducks. And if you're the Ducks, if you're Pat Verbeek, RJ, and you are looking to really move Trevor Zegras the way it feels like they are, or it sounds like they are, and you're looking at this roster, do you move him for another young asset, or do you move him for a more established 26, 27, 28-year-old player to bring in and help lead this team?
It's tough because value-wise, I would say you want to go for another young asset, somebody who matches the age of your core, who's going to be coming up with you. But given the struggles in bringing in veterans, maybe you do look at a trade for somebody. The problem is, if you're trading Zegras at the deadline, it's probably going to be to a team that wants to be competitive, right?
Yeah.
That wants him for help in a playoff run, and they're not going to want to give up veteran help at the deadline. So I think if that's when the trade gets made, it's probably a younger player or futures coming back.
Yeah, that is true. I just think if I'm them and I'm trading Zegras, I would try to work out a deal. And maybe, there's still a lot of time in the off season. You could do this over training camp. You could wait and see how Zegras shows up to training camp, and what his mentality is, and how good he looks, and how healthy he looks too. I just would look at it and I would go, I feel like you could either trade Zegras for another struggling young player, good but struggling young player, or you could just trade him for a slightly older player that's more established and is probably better, at least going to be better in the short term than Trevor Zegras, because that team would be looking to flip for a younger asset that they can maybe, then make better or something. So I don't know. It's something that hasn't been talked about, but I think it's a direction that Verbeek could go. when coming to Trevor Zegras. Otherwise, do you think Vetrano is sustainable? He only shot 13.6%. Like, that's not out of the realm of possibility. You know, there could be regression there, but maybe not a ton.
Right. I don't think he's scoring 37 again, but I think 30 is certainly within the range of is reasonable, I think, to expect for him. He's got a great shot.
Yeah.
This is something we've known about him for years, and it's finally coming through on the stat sheet, but he has a great shot. And I think he'll get plenty of opportunities to use it, right? I mean, they're going to lean on him pretty heavily to be a finisher. So I think the numbers should stay high, but I don't think he's getting 37 again.
No, probably not. Also, does he finish the season with the Ducks? Like, he's a rental. If they retain money, which they absolutely can, they have so much cap space. Almost $22 million in cap space, RJ. He becomes
it up too,
like $1.5 million player.
Right. And for potential 30 plus goal scorer at the trade deadline as a rental, that's really valuable, actually. The Ducks should be looking to move him at the deadline.
I feel like they should, yeah. So it's going to be interesting. There's going to be questions all year, like, you know, McTavish, he's in the last year of his ELC. Again, how well does he play just in general? They need to know, but they need to know contract-wise. I don't know. This team, the last thing we could talk about is goaltending. This team can you know, maybe be a little bit better than they were last year. They probably should be, just because all the young guys are going to take a step forward. But I don't think they'll be that much better unless they somehow finally go to John Gibson and say, we are actually willing to trade you legitimately now. Play good for like 20 games and we'll move you.
Right, because you have John Gibson here as their main goalie, who just I think he's waiting until he gets traded or is about to get traded to play better.
Yeah.
This might just be who he is, because it's been 4 or 5 years since he's looked at all good numbers wise. So this might just be who he is now, but I still think he has that extra gear left in him. He's only 31. And so if the Ducks kind of communicate to him at some point that they could be serious about looking to trade him, he's going to have to play well enough to drum up interest, because he still has that $6.4 million cap hit. That is a lot of money for a team looking to acquire a goalie. He's going to have to kind of turn it on. And I think if he does, that could provide a boost to the Ducks in the short term. But if not, you're still looking at below average goaltending. Although I like Lucas Dostal. He had a strong season last year. You know, positive goals saved above expected. Played better than Gibson numbers wise, just at about any metric. So I think he's actually, you know, and he's 24 too, right? He's kind of entering his prime as a goalie. So I think he's solid in net. I don't hate the goaltending situation, but Gibson is just an issue they have to solve.
Yeah, they do. Anything else for the Ducks that you want to talk about?
No, they just seem kind of uninspiring, honestly, right now. I mean, they're in the running for the most uninspiring team in the division with the team we're going to talk about next.
Yes, and it's fascinating considering how much cap space they have. Up next, though, we get to talk about, oh my gosh, this. Well, are we talking about the Kraken?
Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. I looked at. I had a different. I had Calgary next, but you're right. The Kraken actually finished below the Flames. I had it sorted by points, but it didn't do the tiebreakers properly.
Do the tiebreaker. Seattle.
Sorry, I was talking. I was referring to Calgary, by the way. But we'll talk about Seattle next.
I was gonna say Seattle. We don't really generally talk that much about Seattle during this episode, because we talk about Seattle all the time. We don't really need to. I will say this: when going over everything and we're making our notes for all this, we're going to talk about Calgary in a second, and that kind of rounds out the bad teams in this division. And then we'll talk and go into the teams that all made the playoffs last year, and they all feel like the good teams. I will say this, from a division standpoint, Seattle feels like the one mid team. Like, they feel like the one team that I would not call bad, but I feel like I need to see it from them with the new coaching staff and everything before I'd call them good either. And we just did our 82 game prediction, and we both basically had them at 500. So I feel like this kind of fits.
Right, exactly. I think that's a good way to say it. They are the one mid team in the division. San Jose, Anaheim, as we just talked about, they're going to be in bad territory pretty firmly. I think you can throw Calgary in that list as well, and we'll talk about them in a bit. Vancouver, Edmonton, LA, Vegas. They've all shown a lot of promise before. They're all within a couple points of being 100-point teams last year at the very least. And then you have Seattle in the middle. And this is kind of what we saw from them last season. I think they were a little bit more on the bad side, but I think we all expect them to get a little bit better this year. and it elevates them firmly into mid territory
Mm-hmm.
with the ability to climb a little bit higher. And I think when evaluating Seattle from this season, I think you have to use last season as a starting point because look, 11 of the 12 forwards projected pretty much to start the season are the same as last year. 5 of the 6D are the same. So it's easy to zero in on what the changes were from a lineup perspective, right? It's Chandler Stevenson and it's Brandon Montour.
And
Those
maybe
are
Shane
the two
Wright.
and Shane Wright. Well, that's the other one I was going to get to. Those are the two that aren't coming back from last season. And then the secondary changes are Shane Wright, a full season,
Mm-hmm.
and Riker Evans, potentially a full season, even though he played a lot last year. And so how much does that move the needle on paper? And I think the answer is not very much. It moves, in a significant amount from, I mean, here's the thing. I think we have to be
careful, RJ.
Yeah.
No.
I know. I just
No,
it
I'm
sounded
with you though.
conflicting.
No, I'm with you.
I think we have to be honest with ourselves about the difference between what the Kraken paid for and what they actually added. That's what I'm getting at. Because you paid the money for 2 difference makers, absolute difference makers on a team that could be star players, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think what you brought in is Chandler Stevenson, who on most teams is a serviceable 2C,
Mm-hmm.
but he's not a star.
Mm-hmm.
Brandon Montour, who can munch first pairing minutes, but he's probably a little bit short of that star caliber type of player. And when you look at the big issue of scoring, because that's the number one thing that needs to be fixed, it doesn't move the needle that much from a scoring perspective, I don't think.
Right.
Shane Wright certainly could be. He could move the needle there. But that's a big question mark. And so the way I see it with the Kraken, you have a few different things that have to go right. And sorry, I'll let you talk soon here, Dylan. I think the goaltending has to stay top 10 in the league.
Mm-hmm.
Shane Wright has to be an impact player right away. Matty Beniers has to bounce back to at least like 90% of Calder form. And then those free agent acquisitions have to be as advertised. And if any one of those things goes wrong, then you could potentially be in trouble. But you need those things to go right. That's how I see it.
I think if all of those things go right, they can flex their way up into good territory. I think realistically, some of that stuff will go right, and that'll help keep them mid. I don't think all of it's going to go bad. I will say this, to be a little bit more optimistic while talking about the team. I think more than anything, more than any of the roster moves, just the difference in coaching staff is going to make this team better. And it's going to, they're going to perform better. They're going to be in games in different ways. I think it's going to help with the scoring issue because as we've been going on our Patreon through coaching, right? August has been our coaching month. We've been making coaching videos, talking about systems. I did a live stream last week directly talking about coaching and the Kraken through a lot of it. And as we've been going through and I've been putting together these videos, doing the live stream, I kind of came to the conclusion that I do feel like Dave Hackstall and the coaching staff that he had might have been the worst coaching staff in the NHL last year in the sense of what they got out of what they had, right? Like we talked about Anaheim. Greg Cronin is worse. I would not want Greg Cronin. I think he's a worse head coach than Dave Hackstall, but Greg Cronin's not working with the roster that Dave Hackstall had. And there was just so much of it was they were never really making adjustments to the systems that they were running, even though it was clear offensively, certainly it was not working, right? They weren't working with the personnel they had to individually highlight what made them good players and then put them in positions where they could go out there, use what they're best at, and then succeed. I think that's a problem. Defensively, I mean, they were just making really easy, basic mistakes to point out if you're doing any sort of video coaching, and then they would just make those mistakes for 5 or 6 games in a row. And a good team, or at least a good coaching staff, would not let that happen because they would see the obvious mistakes, they'd work with the players, and it would be fixed the next game or two. And I just think the power play was, I mean, uncreative is like an understatement for the power play, right? And so I just think that a lot of what plagued Seattle last year, yes, a lot of the players underperformed, But I think a lot of that was because they were put in just bad situations. They weren't being put in positions where they could succeed personally. And I think a lot of that's going to change with Dan Bylsma, who will work with those players, who is going to work on getting those players, into positions where they can succeed. He'll move the lineup around as he needs to. If depending on what system they're running, he needs guys in certain spots. We've seen that with the Firebirds. And so I'm really, really optimistic just that the coaching change alone is going to make Seattle a better team and certainly a more watchable team, and one that's going to be a lot easier to root for than they were at times last year. That being said, they still lack scoring. That's going to be an issue for them. Right. Yeah.
And maybe I should have started with the good, because I feel like I started with the bad and the reasons not to believe that they could climb out of that mid territory. And I think that is basically everything on paper.
Yeah.
But games aren't played on paper.
Right.
And I think there is going to be the coaching change and the effects of that it's going to have a huge impact on this team, as it does all around the league when you see a coaching change made, a new coach being brought in. I mean, you look at, like Tocchet with Vancouver last season, right? You go to all of a sudden a division winning team. I think that's a little bit high as far as an expectation for the Kraken, but you see the difference that it can make when you have a new coach coming in. And Dan Bylsma has his work cut out for him. Mm-hmm. But I think the path is certainly there to climb out of that mid territory. So I think you look at the standings last year, Kraken were an 81-point team. And you look at the difference between that and where the playoff line was. You're talking 16 to 18 points, right? That's 8 or 9 games that you need to flip. And that is a lot. That's a lot of games that you need to flip from losses to wins. But if you think back to last year and how it went, and I mean, think of all those post games, Dylan, where we said this was a winnable game.
Yep.
That they found defeat somehow. I think there were easily 8 or 9 games that you could flip just by doing simple things to play the right way and play the way you're supposed to play, that this team, even as amassed on paper, is more than capable of doing.
I think
that's where I believe that they can do it.
Yeah, I think 8 or 9 games might be a little aggressive, but like 5 games, like this team should be 10 points better in the standings.
You dropped 2 games to San Jose, one of the worst teams in the cap era. You dropped a game to Chicago. I mean, you look at especially the teams at the bottom of the standings. You look at that losing streak that they had, through March. I know I was getting there. The one through November and December, and the ones through March, where you lose to say Ottawa 2-0. You lose to Montreal 4-2. Those are the kind of games that you lose to Montreal again in March, like that were there, that were clearly there for them. If you could just play in a way where you weren't giving the game up. And I feel like that is going to change. And so you could probably find 8 or 9 games that you could flip. You also have to then keep the good efforts, right? That, where they won games like the Winter Classic that everyone remembers against Vegas. That's really tough. And maybe you probably lose that more times than you win it. But still, this is what gives me hope that they can climb out of that mid territory. It's all on coaching. Yeah,
you need to keep the effort that allowed them to take so many games to overtime, so that they have like 13, overtime losses and stuff to help out the stats. But yes, I think just the biggest change, more so than any of the roster changes that'll happen this year for the Kraken, is just going to be the coaching change. I just don't think it can be understated, and I'm just so happy it's happening. Like, even if it doesn't work out as great as we think it could, it's going to be better. And it's just going to, like I said earlier, it's going to make the team a lot more fun and a lot easier to root for, because you're just not going to watch the players you like hitting their head against a wall for 82 games, kind of the way we saw them do last year. And I think that's going to be big for a lot of Kraken fans. So I'm looking forward to that.
I am too. It's going to look different.
Yes.
That's for sure.
Yes. And after last season, different can just about only mean better. Calgary, that's I think the longest we've ever spent talking about the Kraken on this pod. Calgary, they make some moves, RJ. There were additions. There was Jake Bean, there was Ryan Lomberg, Devin Cooley in net, Anthony Mantha, whatever's left of them. Those are additions, those are additions. We don't need to talk about subtractions, especially in net, right?
Yeah, definitely not. Yeah, and by the way, this This is what I was referring to as the other uninspiring team with
Yeah.
Anaheim is Calgary. And you can hear by those names that Dylan mentioned as additions that, yeah, not a whole lot of inspiring names there. But yeah, I do think the number one thing you have to talk about with this Calgary team is the subtraction of goaltending.
Yep.
Because Jacob Markstrom kept this team in contention for way longer than they had any business to last season. He finished third in the league in goals saved above expected. He saved about 29 goals above expected per evolving hockey last season. That is just wild to do on a team that frankly was just not as bad as Calgary was. He kept them in it and somehow made them an 81 point team. He's not on the team anymore. He's with the New Jersey Devils, and they go with Daniel Vladar and Dustin Wolf in net. And now I know a lot of people in the area, we like Dustin Wolf. We were rooting for him to get a chance and everything. Neither of those guys are Jacob Markstrom. And so from a goaltending standpoint, it's going to look very different. I think you're going to see a lot of elements of this team that are going to be exposed next season.
Yeah, and I mean, we're to go beyond what's in net. We're talking about a team whose by far and away best offensive player was a 33-year-old Nazem Kadri. I feel like I don't even need to say more. Like, where are the goals supposed to come from for this team? I know you had Kadri at 29. You got Sharon Govich, who gave you 31. You got Blake Coleman, who somehow had 30. But Sharon Govich shot at 17.3%, and Blake Coleman shot at 15.7%. They're not going to do that again.
No, probably not. And really what you're relying on for goal scoring for this team is players who are over the age of 30 shooting at unsustainably high shooting percentages. Yeah. And that's never a good thing to try and hang your hat on. Yeah, Yegor Sharangovich was my answer to where the goal is going to come from, but he's only one man. He can only do so much. I don't think he's going to be scoring 50 goals or anything anytime soon. So yeah, there's just not the scoring on this team. The defense is okay, serviceable. Like Mackenzie Weegar and Rasmus Anderson, I think both pretty underrated defensemen, and they're both pretty good. But beyond that, you have a lot of youth on that blue line, and it's inexperienced, and it's not going to be enough to shore things up beyond that first D pair.
Yeah, no, this team is not going to be fun to watch, and it's not going to be very good. There's not even like fun stuff to talk about with them when it comes to like a division preview.
Yeah, I think really what it would take is their third goalie, Devin Cooley, who they signed over the offseason, getting in net, because he was pretty fun with San Jose at the end of the season, even as bad as that team was. But I don't see anything else on this roster that excites me in any way.
No. So moving on. On to the next team, RJ. We're getting into the good teams now, and the first team up is Vegas. Vegas, they had some big subtractions this offseason. We know that the offseason isn't generally where they do their additions. That is at the trade deadline, but they did have some very, very notable players leave for the Vegas Golden Knights. Most notable, probably Jonathan Marchessault, who very much wanted to stay, and the team just wasn't going to give him a contract or give him a contract for what he's worth. That's for sure. But I also think maybe not talked about as much. I mean, they lose Chandler Stevenson, their 2C as well up front. We know all about that. I also think that, Alec Martinez has kind of been a staple of their blue line for a while. I think that loss could maybe do some stuff there for him. Got to trade away Logan Thompson in net. And then you look on the flip side, who'd they bring in, RJ? Like nobody?
Well, they bring in Victor Olofsson. Really what it is the trade deadline acquisitions, because that's where they make their big moves. And you bring in Noah Hannafin for a full season.
Yes. And
you're going to have a full season of Tomas Hertl, assuming he can stay healthy, which is a big if.
Yeah.
But you have some of those guys that you brought in. As far as in net replacing Logan Thompson, you've got Ilya Samsonov. I don't worry about Vegas in net. It seems like whoever they end up having just plays well enough and they're fine. It's really about the team in front of them.
Yeah.
So that doesn't worry me very much. But you don't have guys that will necessarily replace Marchessault's 40 goals. Now, you could argue that Marchessault, if he had stayed, might not score 40 goals again, given that he's 33. But it's still something that Vegas is going to have to contend with.
Right. He would have still given you 30 like at the least.
Easily.
Yeah. So that's still something that they're going to have to find a way around. Again, they'll probably just bring in somebody at the deadline. That's the MO for this team. I feel like the loss of Chandler Stevenson as, you know, a 2C you could rely on in a lot of situations, or to play with Mark Stone. I am curious about that. I'm curious to see kind of, 2/3C with Chandler Stevenson. I'm curious about like how William Karlsson is now going to have, as center, he's going to really be the 2C from a minutes perspective and from a matchups perspective. And I'm kind of curious to see how William Karlsson handles that. Does it affect his scoring at all? I mean, he's a very consistent scorer, 30 goal scorer, 60 points, doesn't rely on the power play for a lot of that stuff. So does he see a hit just because his matchups at 5-on-5 are going to get a little worse now? I don't know. But I think overall it's Vegas. They're really well coached. They understand what they're doing out there. They're so plug and play ready that I feel like anybody they just bring in over an off season or at a trade deadline or call up from the Silver Knights, they're just kind of ready to go, and they know what they're doing, and they play to their system, and their system is good enough to win you over half of your games every year. It's just the way it is.
Exactly. And I think Bruce Cassidy, their coach, might be the best coach in the NHL, certainly top 3 in my book. And he's going to have the guys prepared. I love the phrase used, plug and play ready, because that's exactly what Vegas is and has been. It's just next man up into whatever spot. And this is a team that's dealt with a lot of injuries over the last few years. And it feels like it just doesn't affect them. Because I want to look at this and say, okay, well, how many games is Mark Stone actually playing, right? How many games is Tomas Hertl actually playing, given his history of knee injuries, and especially given that he might actually be the 2C. Maybe not William Karlsson. I think you're going to see kind of a 2A, 2B thing with Hertl and Karlsson. And so you wonder, how much is he actually going to play? Alex Pietrangelo at 34, Braden McNabb at 33. They've taken a lot of punishment in their careers. How many games do they actually play? You're not quite sure, but it doesn't seem to matter. Whoever they're missing, the next guy just steps up and the system stays good. And that's why I can't really predict a big fall off from them from last season or anything, right? Even last season, I predicted a little bit because they had just won a Stanley Cup. That Stanley Cup hangover, it happens, right?
Yep.
They're still a 98-point team.
Yeah.
I just cannot bet against these guys.
No, I can't either. I think the injuries keep them from being a better team, standings wise, right? Like there's a reason that for the last little bit they've been more in like the battling for the 3rd spot in the division / being a wild card team. But that's the effect of the injuries, is it just keeps them from being like top of the division each year. It's not going to keep them from being a playoff team like that one season. Like that's just not going to happen here. So I think Vegas is just, they're still rock solid. I think they're going to be maybe a little bit worse than they were last year, but still, just because you basically had 2 subtractions up front and the 1 addition of Hertl. But still, they're fine. They're fine.
I think they're okay. And the X factor for me on this Vegas team.
I have one too. Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Well, sorry if this is yours, but Brendan Brisson.
Okay, that's not mine, but go for it.
Okay, good. He's 22 years old. He'll be 23 at the start of the season. And he played 15 games last season, only 15, but he scored 8 points. He put up great numbers in the AHL. He was a 1st-round pick for them in 2020, and he's finally breaking through. They're going to need him for secondary scoring. He's going to be necessary there. But you know what? I like the talent.
Yeah.
I think he can provide what they need in terms of secondary scoring, and he's going to be kind of their breakout winger this season. So that's my X factor for Vegas. Who's yours?
There is a reason that he is the only 1st-round pick they've held on to. Like only drafted 1st-round player of theirs that they have held on to. They literally don't have anybody else. So that I think is big. The one for me, just listen to these and tell me if this doesn't like send a shiver down your spine, RJ. Contract year Aiden Hill.
Ooh, that's dangerous.
Like I feel like, kind of had a rough regular season last year, but you know what? Showed up and played big for them in the playoff games that he got to see. He has proven while with the Vegas Golden Knights, he steps up for when things matter. Things are going to matter for him as a guy who's 28 right now, going to be looking at being an unrestricted free agent next year at the age of 29. It's going to be his last chance to kind of go out there, get that nice, big, juicy contract. He knows how to step up when things matter, RJ. He will do it all season long because he's going to want to get paid. And I think that that's also going to help out this team a little bit there.
It's a good situation. I always love it having two goalies on contract years trying to outcompete each other.
Yeah.
That's Vegas for you.
Yeah, no, that is a good setup for them. LA, RJ. Not too much doing. I mean, like the biggest thing for them in the offseason was that they got rid of Pierre-Luc Dubois. They were able to move that contract. They send him to Washington. They bring in Darcy Kemper to help replace Cam Talbot, who was leaving in net. That's kind of it. Like, I don't feel like there's too much. I guess you lose what's his name on the back end? Where is it? Defenseman.
Sean Walker?
No, they lose Walker?
He was Colorado.
Roy.
Oh, Matt Roy, that's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you do lose Roy on the back end. I liked Roy a lot as a player. So I think that does kind of hurt their blue line a little bit, but you know what, realistically, if now is not the time for you to bring up Brandt Clark, I don't know that there ever will be. So there is that. Otherwise,
yeah, hopefully he gets a shot, because I don't know what they were doing with him last year, keeping him down. He's ready. He's ready to go.
He's so ready. And so otherwise, I look at this team, Quentin Byfield kind of showed up last year. He got paid. They're going to expect more from him. I think he can deliver more. The other young guys are the young guys. They're kind of just going to do what they do. But at the top end, I mean, Kempe, pretty consistent. He's going to do his thing. Kevin Fiala is going to do his thing. Kopitar will continue to probably slowly taper back what his production is, but it's still really good. He still put up 70 points for you. He still eats all the tough minutes and the tough matchups for you and wins 55+% of his faceoffs. And then you have Trevor Moore, is he just going to be a 30-goal scorer, Mr. Thousand Oaks?
Yes, absolutely. People from Thousand Oaks can do anything.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I just bring it up because he only shot 12.7%. Like, the idea of him repeating as a 30-goal scorer in the role that they've put him in is something that is definitely a possibility again for him. I still like the depth down the middle with, Philip Deneau. Drew Doughty, I thought, had a pretty good season considering he's, getting up there age-wise, and the amount of minutes he's played in his career and continues to play for this team is astounding. But I thought he looked all right. So I think this team is, pretty solid, well off. The one thing is, are they going to get the goaltending they got last year? Because I feel like a lot of their flaws were masked by actually getting some decent goaltending. And not even great goaltending, but some pretty decent goaltending. You had Cam Talbot come in and give you a .615 quality start percentage, and then you had David Riddick come in for you and give you a .636 quality start percentage. I don't know that you can repeat that from your goaltending tandem of Darcy Kemper and one of Riddick or Phoenix Copley.
Right. It's going to be difficult to repeat that kind of goaltending performance. Darcy Kemper, not the best last couple seasons. I mean, he does have that familiarity with LA. Last time he was in LA, he did very well, but 34 years old, probably on the downswing of his career. It's going to be tough to replicate that. I actually think Eric Portillo could get some starts and do quite well. I think he's a big prospect. He's 24 years old. I think he's at the age where you can start putting him in some NHL games. He's 6'6", so he's got that size that you're looking for. And I think he could be this year's David Riddick, who starts in the AHL, comes up and provides you some quality starts if one of your goalies either goes down or doesn't play well enough. So it feels like every year I say this about LA's goaltending, where you look at the top two and they're not all that inspiring, but they've got a guy in the AHL that could probably step up and do some things. That was David Riddick last year. I think it's Eric Portillo this year. And looking at the Kings overall, I do like some of the changes that they've made, but I don't think you'll see the effect of it until playoff time. That's the way I'm looking at it here. I like bringing in like a Tanner Jeannot, buying low on a player like that who plays the playoff style of game, scored hardly at all last year. And so they're planning on him to turn that around. But I think he's going to help come playoff time, maybe not a ton in the regular season. Warren Fogle, they signed as a UFA there, where I think he's going to help come playoff time with some of that scoring depth. You saw what he did during the Oilers Cup run.
Yep.
I don't know that you'll see a huge effect during the regular season. Joel Edmondson, replacing one of those D slots. I don't love the signing. I think it's too much money for him. and I don't love the player in the regular season, but in the playoffs, he's someone who can play really physical and hurt opponents. He's done that in the past, and so I think that could help him come playoff time. I just don't think we see it through the first 82 games, but if they get into the playoffs, I think we could see a big jump from them and then finally get past that first round hump. I've said it for years. I don't know that I truly believe it as much anymore, but the year that the Kings get rid of Todd McClellan is the year they win the Stanley Cup. I've said that for years. I just feel like McClellan was that bad of a coach, and the addition by subtraction more than anywhere else. When you look at the coach, and I know they kept an internal candidate, he was, the interim coach at the end of last year, but I think there's going to be that new coach bump for LA. We just might not see it till playoff time.
Well, and we know that big changes to structures and systems are coming, right?
Yes,
because that was
huge.
That was the big thing. Was Jim Hiller came in and he basically kept things more or less the same from certain system standpoints, just because to do a wholesale systems change on a playoff team mid-year is not a wise move, and so he correctly did not do that. But we know from both hearing him speak as well as a lot of the key players on the LA Kings, they will be making those changes over the course of this offseason. The players are very ready for it, I think is a nice calm way of saying it. They are excited about what they can potentially do next year under Jim Hiller. And look, Jim Hiller just being a different voice in the room last year, 21-12-1 with those same systems that nobody wanted to be playing in. So I feel like he's got his finger on the pulse of this team. The guys must trust him after last year. They're going to be excited about what new system it is. I feel like he's going to get the most out of all the players on this roster. I think it's a playoff roster. This team is just good. They're going to keep it going. I think they take a step back goaltending wise. I mean, they were third best in the league in goals against last year. I don't know that can be repeated, but you know what? Maybe they find a little bit more offense and they come up from being exactly in the middle. Either way, I think they're still going to be a playoff team. They're still going to be good, and the coaching is going to make the biggest difference over anything.
Yep, agreed.
All right, Edmonton, RJ, who was a game 7 away from winning the Stanley Cup. Really, we're talking about them here instead of next, because they started the season so poor last year that it kept them from finishing first in the division. I'll go ahead and spoil it. You and I don't think that's going to happen this upcoming season. This team is fantastic. You've got the best player in the world. You've got another guy who's probably top 5. You've got one of the best defensemen in the league. You've got good depth that gets even better with the Jeff Skinner coming in. This team's just stacked. It's going to be good.
Yep, we both picked them to win the division last year. We were both wrong, but it took the worst imaginable start for them.
Yeah.
And they still finished very close. Yeah. I mean, they were within
5 points.
It was a 5-point difference, but still it came down to the last couple days of the season where they were still in contention for it. So I don't anticipate they're going to have another start like that. And even if they do, they've shown they can survive it. So they're going to be our pick. Yeah. Spoiler, they're going to be our pick to win the division. And yeah, you mentioned everything you need to mention. Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, forward depth, some high-end defensemen. Like, they've got everything that you need. Goaltending serviceable enough. You can probably find someone to throw in net that's going to do well enough. They're just miles better than any other team in the division.
Yeah, they are. I'm looking at the additions. I'd mentioned Jeff Skinner. I think that's going to be a big one for them. And I think he's going to be excited about being in a spot where he should finally be able to play a playoff game.
Hopefully.
Yeah,
if you're him, if they somehow miss the playoffs, then I think we can all agree Jeff Skinner is just cursed.
Yes. The ultimate cursed player
100%
in the league. So I think that's a good addition for them. You've talked about Victor Arvidsson. I like Victor Arvidsson. I think he's going to play well there. It's just I think he's going to play 12 games because he just seems like that's all he can do these days, unfortunately.
Yeah, it is unfortunate, his injury situation. He was such a fun player to watch, and he's just had back issues that he's had to deal with due to, some dirty plays that caused that too. I won't get into it, but just where Robert Bortuzzo cross-checked him in the back. I don't want to say he didn't do anything dirty. Yeah. It's unfortunate, right? Yes. But I think the Oilers actually got better. It's not often that you have a team that goes to the Cup Finals and gets better in a salary cap league.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think they got better? Because I do.
Yeah, they got better, arguably in no place more so than on the blue line via addition by subtraction, which is Cody Cece's no longer there. That's going to, I think, be big for them. But you bring in a young defenseman. I know you'll want to talk about him probably, Ty Emberson. I think that helps with the loss of Broberg to the offer sheet. You lose both Fogle and Dylan Holloway. But again, you're bringing in Jeff Skinner. You're going to find people who can just exist in your body, basically on your fourth line. You're going to be fine. You've got enough forward depth that you're going to have a rock solid top six. You're going to have 2 good power play units. Not that it matters. You're just going to run your first power play unit for as much as possible anyway. There's still, enough depth on the blue line that it doesn't matter in the regular season. They're fine. They're just good.
Right. I mean, you replace Cody Cece with Ty Emberson, who I think might actually be an upgrade as it is right now. And so Emberson was looking to start in San Jose on their top D pair, which I know that's a very low bar, but I still think he'll do well enough in Edmonton, and he's in a contract year too, so I think he's motivated to kind of show that next step. They just look solid all around, and I think losing Holloway and Broberg, it's tough from a long-term perspective, but I think right now Emberson is an upgrade over Broberg.
Mm-hmm.
Broberg probably is going to turn out better than Emberson ever will, but right now it's not that much of a downgrade at the very minimum. And Holloway we'll see if they can get anything out of Podkolzin, who they just traded for.
Yeah.
I'm not holding my breath, but again, it's a fourth line spot. It's not going to make that big of a difference.
Yeah, no, they're going to be fine.
Oh, and the one more big thing with Edmonton too is by not matching those offer sheets to Holloway and Broberg, they actually have some cap space to work with here. They're going to have flexibility at the deadline to add a whole lot if they want to.
You're saying assuming Evander Kane goes to LTIR?
Yeah, assuming he goes to LTIR,
Yeah. And I mean, that frees up a lot for them. They're, you're talking over $5 million. That's like a lot for a team this good already to have to work with. It's impressive. Jack Campbell bought out. Just feel like I got to mention it. Probably good for all parties involved. That's, I think, does it for Edmonton for me, although I see you're looking something up.
Oh, no, that's fine. I was just looking at how much cap space they had right now if they don't dip into LTIR, because then they could start accumulating some cap space for the deadline.
It's not much.
Under $1 million they have right now, but I don't know how much that translates to in the deadline, because Puckpedia doesn't have that immediately available and Cap Friendly did. So,
yep. Sorry. I got to bring up old wounds, RJ.
I know.
Speaking of old wounds, we could talk about this from like a new wounds perspective, just given some of the additions that the Vancouver Canucks have had. But Vancouver rode a PDO bender like few teams can, RJ, and they finished first in the division last year. And look, I think they're going to come down a little bit from what they did last year, just because it was a lot. Like it was a PDO bender. But I am just a believer in Rick Tocchet and the system he is running there. I think he learned he learned from his time in Arizona. I think he learned watching and communicating to other coaches while he was working for TNT. And he's just gone into Vancouver and he's instilled the perfect system, not just for his team, but for today's NHL, at least in the regular season. And I just think that Vancouver is going to be really, really solid because of it. And you know what? Also, to their credit, they had all the guys that had big question marks around them. They all showed up last year, and they did it in a way that makes me believe like they're just for real. Like those question marks can just go away for them. This wasn't like a one and done year for Brock Besser. I don't feel like that. It's been a 2 and done year for years for JT Miller or Quinn Hughes or anything. I feel like Pedersen's back and is back to his good self. I feel like this team is just built to be good for the foreseeable future.
Now with Vancouver, I really wanted to predict a huge fall off for them, because when a team rides a PDO bender like that, when they have the best shooting percentage in the league, the 6th best save percentage in the league, and especially for a team where you don't really expect it,
mm-hmm.
I feel like that is bound to crash. But I look at other elements. I look at them being, it's really not power play and PK driven. Like they're middle of the road on both special teams. I think there's room for improvement there. And I look at individual players that, I think this probably is just who Quinn Hughes is, right? I mean, Elias Pettersson, like this is probably where he's at. It wasn't even a crazy season from him. The two that I look at though are JT Miller and Brock Besser, where it's probably not a one and done season for Besser, but he's not shooting 19.6% again.
No.
JT Miller's not shooting 19% again.
No.
Niels Höglander isn't shooting 20% again for 24 goals, right?
Yeah.
No way. Dakota Joshua isn't shooting 21.4%. He goes to the net a lot, so he shoots probably a pretty high percentage, but he's not shooting over 20%. I just look at the number of 20+% shooters that they had last year.
Certainly 19+.
Yeah, or the 19+% shooters that they had last year, and how many goals that accounted for. That can't be sustainable, right?
Or can it? No, it's not. But I do think that some of it is partly the system, like their breakouts and then how they attack through the neutral zone, and then especially how they enter the offensive zone puts them in just such great positions to have as high a percentage chance off the rush as you could possibly have. And I do think that will just, as assuming teams can't really find a way to adjust to that will just kind of naturally keep your overall shooting percentage a little bit higher, because you're just getting high percentage chances. Like, this is not a team that is built to cycle a lot in the offensive zone and then create their chances. It's almost like we're going to cheat a little bit so that we get like a full sail offensive chance off the rush, and then immediately everybody's just regrouping to go back. Like, we're not going to try to collect the rebound if it doesn't go in. It's fine. We're going to regroup in the neutral zone. We're going to work on stopping you there so that then we can attack again off the rush. And I feel like when you're attacking off the rush with like 3-on-1 chances multiple times every game, you're going to find a way to have like kind of a slightly higher shooting percentage. I'm with you. Brock Besser's probably not going to be a consistent 40 goal scorer. JT Miller's not going to be the player that he's kind of been these last little bit, but Brock Besser's going to be a consistent 30 goal scorer in this system. JT Miller's going to be a consistent probably 30 goal scorer and 85 plus point player in this system. And so I think there will be regression from last year for Vancouver, but just because I so believe in what Rick Tocchet's doing, until the NHL finds a way to stop it, I believe in it, and I think they're just going to continue to just pour the goals on. Now, where things can really go wrong is going to be in net, RJ, because Thatcher Demko might miss the season, and that's not ideal for this team at all.
Yeah, it sounds at least like there's questions about whether he'll be ready to start the season or not. Yeah, it's a possibility, and seems like the Canucks are in the goalie market now. They're looking to go acquire somebody because it seems like they're going to need somebody to start the season off. And if Demko does miss a significant amount of time, that could make a huge difference. I mean, that leaves you with Artur Shilovs as your starting goalie, which again worked out fine in the playoffs. He was good. I mean, he's a younger goalie. I think he's ready to take that next step to at least be a backup in the NHL. But having the starting role thrown on him immediately might be a lot. I think you got Yuri Patera is the next goalie that they have in the system. And so you would need to bring in somebody else. And so I don't know about you, Dylan. Personally, I feel like it doesn't matter a whole lot in a long regular season. I think if the team in front of a goalie is good enough, you can find good goaltending. This is part of my philosophy about why you go cheap in net, because you can find somebody that can step in and give you good goaltending. Shilov showed it in the playoffs last year, and I think he could show it in the regular season this year, along with whoever else they bring in.
Regular season's a long time for a young goaltender having to do that, though. And I will give you that in systems more like the way Vegas handles their transition, where they still have some really strong defensive backbone players. They've got really good defensive wingers that are good, come in deep in the zone and help things out defensively. Vancouver doesn't care as much about defense as maybe Vegas does. And so I wonder if, and to an extent this was last year, but you had Thatcher Demko that you could really lean on and who played fantastic. And even though Casey DeSmith wasn't great from like a traditional goaltending, well, even by non-traditional standards, he was at least solid when it came to quality start percentage. But the bottom line is, and what I'm working towards is, this could be the ultimate kind of run and gun team, where they're going to win via the transition and just going with speed and trying to attack fast and the length of the ice every single time. But when they lose, it'll also be because they're just going to give up a lot of chances too. Like there's just going to be a lot of high quality chances in every game Vancouver plays for both teams. And if you lose the goaltending battle more often than not, then that could become a real problem for you. And I do feel like without a true veteran presence who's going to be prepared for that run and gun, I have question marks. I like Silovs. I understand the story and how much fun he was last year during the postseason, but can he survive 55 games of that? Is he going to hold up for that? I don't know.
You're talking me into believing in the Canucks really falling off. I will say that actually I do find that a compelling argument.
It is,
as far
right?
as why the goaltending would matter on this team versus other teams.
Yes, because
where it's not interchangeable with this Vancouver team.
Right, because this team is going to put their goaltender in a really tough spot where they are going to have to make, odd man rush chance saves multiple times a game. And Thatcher Demko, as much as I've been a critic of his in the past, he looks great in that system. He is a guy who can handle that, and he very much rises to that occasion. I don't know about anybody else they have, and even if they go out, if Demko is going to miss time, and you go out and you pick up whoever becomes available after training camps, are kind of decided, and other teams' goaltending battles for, they have like 3 guys and they're trying to decide on 2. I just don't know that you're going to be able to bring in somebody who's going to be able to handle that. You had mentioned somebody, though, and I do think in a weird way this player could do it, RJ, and that is Martin Jones.
Martin Jones. Yes, our old friend Martin Jones, who is from North Vancouver, actually. So he would be a local coming home, playing for his hometown team. I think it'd be the perfect story, and also I think he could help them early on. I actually think that would be a decent signing to solve all the problems. He's not going to be the starter. He probably should not play more than 20 or 25 games, or else you're in trouble. But I think that's the guy they should go with right away if there's no goalies on the trade market that make more sense.
Yeah. So I think that is the danger area for Vancouver. If Vancouver really falls off this year, this is why they're going to fall off. That being said, RJ, I believe in the system and the players they have offensively. I don't think they're going to be as good as they were last year, but I still think they're going to be very, very good.
I wouldn't go very, very good. You've actually given me a lot to think about as we now rank these teams.
Okay.
From 1 to 8 in the division here.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and transition over to it, and we won't bury the lead. We've already talked about it. Both have Edmonton first. They're just the most complete team in the division. They've got the best player. They know what they want to do. They're going to be first.
Yeah, there's not much more to say about that, really. The Oilers should win the division pretty easily.
Yes. Second, I've got Vancouver. Do you?
I have Vegas.
You have Vegas. Okay, so I did talk you down on Vancouver.
You did. You really did talk me into it. I was originally going to have Vancouver at number 2. I just can't put them there given everything that we talked about, right? With the goaltending being a question mark, being a run and gun team, if you're getting the saves at one end and you're scoring every time at the other end, pretty much, then you're a 109-point team like they were last year, and you win the division. But given that the saves are a question mark, it doesn't leave a whole lot of room for error as far as finishing goes. And I look at the shooting percentage, a lot of the top players, and it just doesn't seem sustainable to me. It's going to be good because they're good players, but you look at everything they've done in their career so far, and I don't think the Canucks can keep the number 1 spot as far as shooting percentage. How often do we see the same team finish first in back-to-back years in that stat and team shooting percentage? You just don't see it. And I just don't think that leaves them a whole lot of margin for error. They're still a playoff team. They're definitely still a playoff team, but I can't go with them for second in the division.
I can, because I just have big serious question marks for both LA and Vegas in a larger way even than what I have for Vancouver. I think it's possible, RJ, that we see if Edmonton really beats up on this division and the Sharks get a little bit better, Anaheim maybe improves a little, there's going to be a drop off from Calgary, and Vegas and LA and Vancouver kind of all end up roughly the same. Could we see a division set up here where, even though I have Vancouver in second in the division, I don't necessarily know that they get to 100 points?
I think we could see something like that. I think we'll see Vancouver, Vegas, and LA all in that 100-point range, just around there.
Yeah.
Maybe separated by a point or two. It's going to be really close.
I think it will be close. I believe in what I've seen from Vancouver enough to have them at 2, but I definitely think, like I said, I think they could have a 10-point drop off, like easy. Like that's fine. And I still think they'd end up second because I have questions about these next 2 teams. You have Vegas at 2. Who do you have at 3?
At 3, I have Vancouver.
Okay.
I think one of Vegas or LA will pass them, but not both.
Yes, I agree with that, obviously, because I have Vancouver even higher. I've got the Kings in 3rd.
Okay.
I look, I don't want to count out Vegas. I liked the argument I made about Aiden Hill in a contract year. I liked that one a lot. But Vegas is just not going to be healthy. Like, Vegas's existence is we become a wild card team, we get to the postseason, we turn it on, everybody plays through whatever injuries we've kind of been letting them rest over the regular season, and we just go from there. And I feel like that's a really good idea and plan for them, and I don't see why they should necessarily sell out to try to maximize things in the regular season for them in a way that I feel like LA is going to kind of want to, and they seem to want to every year. So I feel like LA is going to finish a little bit higher than Vegas. I'm with you. It's going to be extremely close between Vancouver, LA, and Vegas, but I think LA is going to be there because I just feel like consistently their players actually play hockey games, and that's a question for Vegas, and it's not for LA. And so I think that that's good for them. I also think that the drop off in goaltending for the Kings that we're going to see this year from last year is going to be made up for it with the kind of increased offensive production from the new systems Jim Hiller is going to implement. So I think it's going to end up kind of being a wash. We more or less see the team we saw this year, and that's like a 99-point team, and so 3rd place for them.
Yeah, I see them in a similar point range, but like I said, when we talked about LA specifically, I don't see the biggest jump coming until playoff time. And you look at the acquisitions they made, and those are not maybe the most regular season type of guys, but they're the guys that help get you through once you're there. And I think there's going to be some growing pains with the new system. It's going to be a net positive, but you might not see that happen until later in the season when maybe you've had some points that you didn't get earlier in the year that you kind of make up for later. So it's all going to be really close. But yeah, I have. Did we get to 4? I have LA at 4.
Yeah. I was gonna say you have LA at 4. I've got Vegas at 4. I basically already gave my reason why. They're a really good team, but they're gonna miss a lot of games to injury, and they're not gonna force the issue.
Yeah. So we have pretty clear, I think, a top 4 for us,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
For me, it's a pretty big gap from 4 to 5. I mean, really from 1 to 2. And then 2, 3, and 4 close, and then from 4 to 5.
I agree with that. A lot. At 5, Seattle. We talked about them. They're the one mid team. This is the spot for the mid team. We've talked about the good teams. Here's the mid team. Seattle at 5.
Yep. I think this one's pretty simple. They're just not at the level of the top 4. Maybe if things break right, or things fall apart for one of the top 4. Because I mean, we talked about the plus side for some of these teams, right? With like a Vegas or LA, but I think there's always a chance that you could have one of those implode. Or I don't know, Vancouver's got really far to fall if they're going to be worse than that. But maybe one of Vegas or LA doesn't do very well. If things go right for Seattle, I think you could climb up into that top 4. But it would take a lot going right for them and a lot going wrong for one of those top 4 teams.
Yep. So now becomes actually the hardest part about this, RJ, and that's ranking the 3 teams at the bottom. Now, I think the easiest one is actually this first one that we'll talk about, and that is I've got Calgary at 6th in the division. I feel like they're going to drop off pretty heavily, but you know what? I just don't see, for reasons, both Anaheim or San Jose being able to be better than them. I just think like they are solid enough. They have enough veterans on their team that they will not be as bad as those 2 California teams. So Calgary in 6 for me.
I agree with that. They're going to be worse, but if you look at last year's standings, are they going to be 22 points worse, or 22 points worse, and you factor in however much Anaheim or San Jose gets better? That's a huge gap, and I just don't think it's all going to be made up. They still have enough talent. Probably, unfortunately for them, I think they might like to finish lower for the long-term health of the franchise.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're still going to be somewhere in that 70s point-wise, and I
Yes.
don't see Anaheim or San Jose getting there.
I was just going to say the same thing. They're going to have 70-ish points, 70 to 75 points probably. This is so tough.
It is, isn't it?
It's really tough at the bottom here. I'm going to let you go first.
Are you going to let me go
I'm
first?
gonna make
Okay.
You go first. I'm not going to let you. I'm going to make you.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. Because I would let you go first, but you're making me go first. I'll go with Anaheim at 7. and San Jose at 8 in last. I know you were tempted to pick San Jose as finishing higher than Anaheim this year, so I'll let you have that. And also because I do believe in this, and I think it's going to come down to the blue line. San Jose's blue line is just so bad, and Anaheim's might actually be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I think scoring wise, the Ducks have a lot of young talent. It almost feels like a wash to me with San Jose. The Sharks have a couple more veterans, like a Tyler Toffoli is going to make a big difference, but big enough to outdo. I look at because the Ducks still have Frank Vetrano for at least the portion of the season they have him. They've got Trevor Z. They got Troy Terry, who we didn't even mention when talking about the Ducks, but he's going to do his thing. I think the forward group is at least a wash. The blue line is definitely better. Goaltending is a total wild card, and maybe that swings things in San Jose's favor. But I look at the Anaheim roster and I say right now it's better than San Jose's.
I have to agree. I want to pick San Jose over Anaheim. I do. But here's the problem. Like I'm wondering how much of it is just me fading Anaheim so much because of Greg Cronin. Like, which is a problem. But like, I'm just with you. Like San Jose, the big pieces for them, even up front, like Celebrini would have to hit the ground running, and Will Smith would have to hit the ground running at a very, very good pace. Like they'd both have to be like Bedard level, which is possible, but like they both have to be Bedard level, I feel like, to kind of match the output offensively, production wise, that Anaheim's going to have. So I just can't go with that. And that blue line, when we were talking about it, because I was leaning San Jose before we talked about them on the pod, like when we talked about it before the pod. Just re-looking at the blue line when we did talk about San Jose like an hour ago made me just go, there's no way. That team is just, thinking about Mackenzie Blackwood and how good he looked last year and the quality starts he had last year, but it just did not matter because of the insane high percentage chances that defense was giving up, and the fact that is just probably not going to change. They will literally just give up so many goals, it will not matter. And I just think San Jose has to then finish at the bottom. As much as I think they have the energy and the momentum, and Anaheim is absolutely holding themselves back, I just think San Jose's blue line is just so bad it does not matter.
Yeah, well, we do agree on that then. I guess we have come over to agreement. I was hoping you would try and make the case for San Jose and just kind of seeing what that would be. I guess the best case I could make for San Jose is that you're betting on a very promising young coach that we both like a lot versus probably the worst coach in the NHL. Yeah. And so you can never rule a team out when that's the case. But yeah, I think we do agree Anaheim's going to be a little bit better than San Jose this year. Yeah, but it would, would it surprise you if they were like 4 or 5 points apart? It wouldn't surprise me. No, I guess not. It's still, it's still a tight gap, but yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. I don't know. So there it is, everybody. Let us know your thoughts. As you always do. I always love this one because there's lots of fun stuff and directions we can go in when we talk about the division and how it's going to end up. Try not to let me have it, Canucks fans. Go for it. I think it's very reasonable considering the goaltending situation. I think you're going to be fine, RJ. Of course, they're Canucks fans, so what do I know? Yeah, fine. What are you talking about? No. I was trying to land it positive there. I think it's been a really fun discussion. Love doing this episode with you each year, RJ. Love doing the month of August with our way too early segments and episodes so much. I'm always so sad when it has to come to an end, like it has to for this one. Sad it's got to come to an end for the little studio setup I've got here. That's still like now that's setting in as I actually have to like close out the podcast here. It's a little tough. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to send it to you. You did a great job earlier talking about Queen Anne Beer Hall. I'll send it to you for talking about them one more time before we sign off. Yep, everyone check out Queen Anne Beer Hall. Dylan, you're going to be up here soon. That's the sweet of the bittersweet. Yep. You got to tear down that setup, but you know what? We get to visit Queen Anne Beer Hall. Go check them out. And you're going to move up here soon, so that's going to be really fun. And as with August, the bittersweet part of August, right? It's always fun doing these way too early episodes. I love them every year. Mm-hmm. But with the August ending comes September. And some hockey again. We get to see the Kraken back on the ice, training camp, all the storylines that come with that. There's going to be a ton of stuff to cover and talk about. Can't wait to have you all along on the ride with us as we're both going to be here for training camp and the season. So looking forward to that. Yeah, definitely looking forward to it. Really looking forward to the new coaching staff
and just everything that's going to bring. I think training camp's going to be a lot of fun with the new coaching staff that the Kraken have. So really looking forward to that one. Gonna say goodbye to everybody for now, and next time you see me, I should be in Seattle, knock on wood. We'll see y'all next time. Oh, there I go. Got after going.
Hey everyone, before we go, we just wanted to give a quick shout out to all of our awesome patrons over at patreon.com/Emerald City Hockey, especially our Terror of the Deep patrons.
Thank you so much for making all this possible. We really appreciate your support.